Welcome to the Massage Life podcast. I'm Melissa Pearson, registered massage therapist, and I'm here with my husband Jordan, who is a chartered professional accountant. And we're here to talk about
taxes. Again, we're going to talk about
why?
taxes. I'm sorry. It's March 5th. People are getting geared up for tax time. And there's one thing that's been on my mind lately, and I really want to share it with everyone because I think it's a really valuable piece of information. So as a CPA, for the most part, I like taxes. I like talking about taxes. I like talking about business. Actually, I should back up. I don't really, when people come to me and say, hey, can you do my tax return? I just like cringe because I don't like doing that.
Well, that's not really
That's not what I do.
Yeah.
Like on a day-to-day basis, that's not what I do. I'm a CPA, so more than the average, I know more about income taxes than the average person, but it's not what I do on a daily basis, right? I don't just pump out personal and corporate tax returns. That's just not something
I think some people
I do.
assume that's all accountants do, that you only are in charge of taxes. Because people say that to me all the time. I'm like, oh, it's my husband's an accountant. Like, oh, he must be so busy right now with taxes. And I'm like, he's not really the tax guy.
That's not what he does,
Yeah.
right? So my area of expertise is financial reporting. So I have a background in audit. So I would audit the financial statements for publicly traded companies and some private sector companies. I also did like Alberta Health Services. So I was on the financial statement audit for them. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I'm sure it's fine, right? Like, it's not, it's public knowledge that they get audited and that KPMG is the auditor for them. And so anyways, but on a daily basis, I do financial reporting. So that's my area of expertise. That's what I really like doing. I guess what you could say is that in some respects, I'm a glorified bookkeeper for a really big company. That's what I do. That's my day job. But when it comes to our income taxes, so I file our income tax return, and then I also do all of the bookkeeping and financial reporting for your business and then the other businesses that we operate. And I enjoy doing that, right? I like the work that I do, and I think people should, right? Like, I don't know how you do what you do, but I know that you love being a massage therapist, and I think that that's awesome. Now, one of the things I was thinking about as I was putting your financial package together last week, getting everything ready for tax time, is we need to talk about vehicle expenses. Mm-hmm. So let's just back up and first talk about vehicle expenses as a write-off for sole proprietors. So if you're a sole proprietor, and I think we talked about this in our income tax episode. I'm not sure, we might have, but just it's a good starting point because it really leads into what I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. So if you are earning business income, you obviously can write off expenses, and one of the expenses that you may be able to write off are your vehicle expenses. Mm-hmm. So it's really easy if you're a corporation. So if you've gone through the process of incorporating your business, it's really simple. So how it works is you just keep track of your mileage, so the kilometers that you drive to earn business income, and then you would pay yourself. The corporation would pay you an allowance for every kilometer that you drive, right? So it's 61 cents for every kilometer that you drive can be paid out to you. Okay, and so that then becomes a write-off for the corporation. And it's not taxable income for you because it's just a reimbursement for the use of your personal vehicle. Right. Okay, so it's really simple.
When you talk about a log, right?
Yeah, you still have to keep a log. You still have to keep track of the kilometers, but it's different though because it's not like. So typically you'd record your mileage for the whole year, right? So you'd have your opening odometer and then your ending odometer. So opening on January 1 and then ending at December 31st. And then you'd keep track of all the business trips that you made during the year. And then whatever the percentage of business travel is during the year, like then you take a percentage of your personal vehicle expenses. For a corporation, it's really simple because you just mark down, okay, I drove here on this day to do this thing for this business. So maybe you went to a course up in Edmonton. We live in Calgary, so maybe you drove to Edmonton. So round trip, 600 kilometers, right? So you'd record that. You'd say, and you'd have like a little form, 600 kilometers were driven to attend this course. You'd give that to the corporation. You need to reimburse me 61 cents for every kilometer that I drove. The corporation would then pay you that amount, and the corporation would record that expense. So it's very simple.
Right.
Now,
you don't need to keep any gas receipts or anything.
Yeah, you don't need to keep gas receipts. You don't need to track any of that stuff. So it's really simple. Now, if you're a sole proprietor, it's very different, right? So you have to keep a vehicle log because we need to know what percentage of your the use of your personal vehicle was to earn business income, right? And so you need a vehicle log to substantiate that.
Right.
And so if it's 10%, 20%, whatever. The other thing you have to do is you have to keep track of all of your personal vehicle expenses, right? So you don't get to use that prescribed rate. You don't just get to say, okay, I drove 2,000 kilometers this year. I'm going to use the CRA's prescribed rate of 61 cents per kilometer. That's my expense write-off. You don't get to do that. You're not allowed to, which is really annoying. It'd be nice if you could, but that's not how it works. And so you have to keep track of, you have to keep your gas receipts. You have to keep all of these different records.
Maintenance.
Yeah, maintenance, insurance, registration, all of that stuff. You have to keep track of everything. And then what you do is at the end of the year, you total all of that up. Okay. And then if you drove 20% for business, then you get to write off 20% of those expenses, right? Makes sense, right? Now, the thing I was thinking about is for a lot of therapists, especially therapists who are working, let's say in a clinic, right? So we've talked about this before about how you don't get to record your travel to and from the clinic, right? Because that's not really fair, right? It's assumed that everyone has a job that they have to travel to. And so you don't get to write off the travel to and from your clinic. But any other travel, let's say you need to attend a course in a different city, or you attend an AGM for your association, or you have to drive to a store to buy linens or lotions or whatever, anything related to your business, you can recognize that travel as business travel.
Right.
Okay. So for a mobile therapist like yourself, it's very different, right? Because you're traveling all the time, all over the place. Like that's the nature of your business is travel. And so we record all of that travel that you do. And so the use of our personal vehicle is a little bit higher. Now, where I wanted to go with this was just because you're allowed to write something off doesn't mean you should, right? Because it may not be worth the time that you have to put in to get to that end number that you need to write off. So let's imagine for a second that, because you've been in this situation, when you worked in a clinic, you would be, maybe you'd have a couple trips a year for things that you could write off, but it would be very small. So let's say it's like, let's be generous. Let's say it's 5% of your total vehicle expenses that you're allowed to write off. And so if I'm looking at, just to give you some real numbers, so I have all of the numbers for 2022. So I have all of our gas receipts here. I have all of the maintenance that we did, all the registration, the insurance, all of that's been mapped out. And so based on your vehicle log, you're allowed to write off 47.04% of our personal vehicle expenses for this vehicle. And so the business portion that you're allowed to write off is $1,798.99. Okay, that's your expense. So on your financial statements, you'll see that. This is the business use of my personal vehicle. That's what I've written off. Mm-hmm. Now that's a pretty significant number, right? But let's pretend for a second that you only used 5% of your vehicle to earn business income. Well, now your write-off is only $191, right? It's so small. Mm-hmm. And so that's the expense that you're going to write off. Well, what's the tax savings to you? Like how much money are you going to have in your pocket?
Yeah, some people think, I'm getting back $191.
No, you're not getting that back. Yeah. Like that's just, again, going back to our discussion in an earlier episode, right? You have these write-offs, these expenses that you write off, that lowers your taxable income so that you pay less tax. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's assume that your marginal income tax rate is 20%, right? Well, then the money in hand is going to be like $38. And let's just say like it could be higher, like 20 to 30%, right? You're looking at $40 to $50 in like cash in hand. That's how much money you get. And so you have to ask yourself, is it worth the time to keep track of all these things? Mm-hmm. To have, all of the gas receipts, to keep those and to make sure that, they're photocopied or something so they don't fade. Like you need to keep that record for 7 years, right? Somewhere, so that if the CRA ever asks for it, you have it there ready for them. Is it worth it for you? Is $50 worth it for you to do all of that work?
Right.
And I think for a lot of therapists, it's not worth it.
Right.
And there was a time even for us where it's like, I knew that it wasn't worth it. So it's just like, I'm not going to bother because it's not worth it for us to track all of those things.
Right.
It's not, my time is more valuable, right? It's not worth it for me to spend however many hours it would take throughout the year to save, $40. It's not worth it to me.
Right.
And so I think that's a really valuable lesson that people should take away, therapists should take away from this. Just because you can write something off doesn't mean that you should.
Right.
Because the work that goes into it may not be worth it in the end.
Right. Maybe a good way for people to check if it is worth it is track it for a year. If you're pretty steady, same job, same kind of hours, do it for a year and see what it equates to. And then, you can say, oh, that was only, $40. Then maybe the next year you would choose not to track everything.
Right.
Because you might not know. Even it surprised me how much I tried to guess how much of my vehicle did I use over the year for business purposes. And I thought maybe 30%, 40%. But when you said it was almost 50%, it's like, actually, it's pretty high.
Yeah,
Like it does add up.
Yeah.
But mind you, I'm 100% mobile, so it makes sense. But
Right.
Definitely, I think it's smart to try and see if it's worth it or not.
Right. I would say if you're a mobile therapist, 100% it's going to be worth
it's
it.
Huge. Yeah.
Like that's the nature of your business is travel, right? Yeah. Well, it's not the nature of your business, but that's like key component of your business.
Right.
But for a therapist that's just working at a clinic, like it's 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be worth it for them to go through all the work to track everything.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that's frustrating, so we use QuickBooks Online for our bookkeeping, and that program is really handy because when you have a business expense, I'm always giving you a hard time because I was like, Melissa, it's so easy. All you have to do is take a picture of the receipt in the app and then I'll take care of the rest. I'll make sure that it's categorized properly. It's very simple. The thing that's frustrating.
But then I don't. I just come and throw a receipt at you.
Right.
I'm like,
or,
here's your receipt.
Usually what happens is I can see on your business visa that you've purchased something and it's like, I don't see this receipt.
You always
anywhere.
ask me like, Melissa, where's this receipt? I have to go rummage through my purse, the bottomless pit of my purse, and there's a crumpled up receipt. Here you go.
Here you go. It's all faded. It's like, what is this? Yeah. So that's typically how it works, but it's really simple. You take a photo with the app. It's pulls the information and it does a lot of the work for you. The thing that's frustrating about having to track personal vehicle expenses is you could track it in the app, but then it just makes your bookkeeping a little bit messier because there's no way to kind of parse things in QuickBooks. Well, I guess there sort of is a way, but it's not in a way that I like. And so, because all of those expenses would just get lumped in as business expenses, as if you're writing off the full amount. And we obviously don't want to do that. It just muddies the water. And so what I do is I have a separate record, right, where I track all of that stuff. It's really annoying, right? I still take a picture of the receipt, but I scan that, I save it on our computer in a separate file. So I have the receipts there. And then I have a little spreadsheet where everything gets tracked. It's really simple and straightforward, but it's just kind of a pain.
Right.
And so again, you may have a really good system in place, but it still may not be worth it for you, right? Even if it's only 2 hours of work over the course of the full year, you need to ask yourself, is that really worth a savings of $40? For some, it might be, right? And I respect that. If you want to put in the work, you're obviously allowed to write that off. It's an eligible write-off. But in some cases, it's just not worth it for people. And so don't waste your time.
Right.
Yeah. And I was trying to think of some other examples. I couldn't really, the business use of home expenses. Again, I think 9 times out of 10, it's going to make sense for you, especially if you're operating out of your home, right? Again, if you're a therapist that works at a clinic, well, you wouldn't really be eligible to write off your home expenses anyways, so it's not really a concern. But unless you have a giant house, right? Maybe you have a 5,000 square foot house and your massage room is only 100 square feet, right? Well, then it wouldn't make sense because it's such a small portion of your house. I mean, if you have a 5,000 square foot house, you're probably not worried about money anyway, so who cares? But yeah, that's the main thing that I wanted to share. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about, or?
No, I think that was really helpful. yeah, I think that'll be interesting for a lot of people to think, something to think about for sure.
Yeah, yeah. It just and I'd love to hear what people think, right? Because you know, a lot of therapists just get so hung up on like, you
must
know,
find every write-off I can.
which is good. I think that's a good mindset to have, but you have to weigh the, you know, the cost benefit, right? Is the cost of my time worth the benefit that I'm going to realize in the end?
Right.
Yeah. And for some write-offs, like I think about some of the write-offs that you have, you know, I'm sure, like I think about the time you had a client where you bought them like Jones Soda. Didn't you buy a kid Jones Soda?
Yeah,
you
it
were
was like an insider thing.
yeah. So there was one of your clients was like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
Or you tell the story. How did?
Oh, yeah. So I have these teenagers that I massage, and they're quite. I don't think shy is the right word, but it's kind of socially funny, and so I try to really talk to them, and they've gotten really to get to know me and like me, and so one time we were talking about last names, and they were talking about Jones. It's not their last name. They're someone in their family's last name or something. They're like, oh, that's such a lame name. And I was like, whatever, there's Jones Soda. And they're like, what are you talking about? What's Jones Soda? And I was like, how have you never had Jones Soda?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the corner store's like down the street, so I just got them a Jones Soda and brought it over.
Yeah,
after,
so
just
like,
to like make a connection with them.
Right.
'Cause I've seen them lots of times. Like they're regular clients.
Right. And that's an eligible write-off.
But right, it was
right?
Yeah.
Because it's a client gift that was purchased to create customer loyalty.
Right.
Right? And so that customer loyalty is going to help you earn business income. So you can tie that expense to the generation of future income. And so it's an eligible write-off. But it was like $2.
Yeah.
It was like $2.
Right.
But it was so easy. We wrote that off because how much time did it take me to, you know, take a picture, put it in the app, record it? Like, you know, 10 seconds. It was so easy. Right. And so of course I'm going to take the 10 seconds. The tax savings is going to be like 20 cents, right? But it's still, you know, the 10 seconds, like, well, I might as well, right? Like, take a picture, super easy. Anyways. Okay.
Before we sign off, I did want to make a correction to something we said on our last episode.
Was it our last episode?
I think so.
I think it was a while. Are you talking about the insurance stuff?
Yeah.
I don't think that was our last episode.
Okay, well, whatever episode it was. I'm pretty sure it was last.
Nobody's going to care.
Okay, whatever.
Go on.
So because last episode we talked about incorporating or not incorporating. And we talked about one of the benefits to incorporating is that you can write off health expenses if you have a health spending account.
Right.
And
if you're incorporated.
Right. But if you're just sole prop that I forget what the company's called, but this company won't allow you to opt into their program where you can write off health expenses, like medical expenses. And so I actually stand corrected. The company that I looked into is that way, but there are other companies that allow sole proprietors to opt into their program, and you can run your expenses through that. So your massages, chiro, going to the dentist, things like that. You can run it through this program and count it as a business write-off.
Right.
So I stand corrected. That does exist.
Right.
So I just wanted to make that clarification.
So sometimes we make mistakes, is what you're saying.
It's rare, but you know. Also, I have an embarrassing moment if you want to hear it.
That came across as very pretentious.
What?
We should be humble, right?
I am being humble. No, I was being facetious.
Yeah, I know you were being facetious, but people might not.
They don't know. They don't know us
facetious.
yet that we're crazy.
Yeah, if you don't know us by now, that
No.
we're like, we like to joke and have fun and be
Yes,
sarcastic.
we do.
And, yeah, overly facetious, and yes.
No, but we do make mistakes sometimes, but we will always correct them.
Yeah, and I'm not. I mean, there's so many. I'm one of thousands of accountants, and I know that I'm not the smartest accountant in the world. There are some things, believe it or not, that I don't know how to do, right? Like I have never, I don't know if I should make this confession, I have never filed a corporate tax return.
You said that on the last episode.
In the real world.
In the real world.
I've never done that. I've only ever done it in hypothetical scenarios.
Right.
Because like I'm not a tax, like my area of expertise is not tax. I have a lot of experience with like the personal tax side of things. And so, you know, you can consider me an, I don't want to use the word expert, but I think it's fair to say expert in that realm. Yeah. Right? Like I know what I'm talking about. But yeah. Yeah, I'm not an expert at everything.
Well, that's like massage too. People have their niches.
Right.
Okay. Also, do you say niche or niche? Because
niche just sounds. I feel like
it sounds wrong. I was listening to this podcast and they kept saying niche, and it was bothering me.
So it's kind of like it's kind of like the people who say bruschetta, right? It's like, yeah, that's probably like, I know that's how you're supposed to pronounce it, but it's like nobody pronounces it.
You know what's the
like
other
that.
word? Eczema is supposed to be pronounced
Again.
eczema.
Yeah.
I went to the dermatologist and they kept saying eczema. And then every time I went to go say it, I kept saying eczema. And I was like, oh, I'm saying it wrong. And I tried to say it their way. And I was like, but it just sounds wrong to say eczema.
Eczema. Bruschetta. Yeah, so it's probably niche, but it sounds stupid because nobody says it. Only the people who are like, this is how it's supposed to be said, right? Those are the people who, which I'm usually like that, right? Because it's
Correcting people?
Yeah, correcting people.
Like correcting grammar and...
Yeah, you forgot to use an apostrophe, or your use of the semicolon there is not correct.
You and the semicolon, just...
I love the semicolon.
Okay, do you want to hear my embarrassing moment?
Yes, you have an embarrassing story.
I haven't told it to you yet. I
haven't?
wanted you to hear it in the raw.
Okay,
real
I'm ready.
Response.
I'm ready.
It's probably...
Do I need to take a deep breath?
It's probably my worst.
Am I going to look at you differently after this?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay, so it's one of those things that you should never ask someone, but I did.
Oh, no.
You know it already, I think.
Oh, no.
Okay, so this past week...
She's not pregnant, is she? Damn it.
So this past week, we did...
Is that it?
Can you be quiet and let me tell my story? You're the
Okay.
worst. Okay, so this past week, I ran a yoga and massage class with my friend Brianna.
Okay.
And this is our fourth one. So it's a yoga class. It's a yin style yoga class. And I go
A
around...
yin style?
Yin.
What is that?
It's where
Yin?
you need to go to yoga more.
Where you like...
No, it's... So you just... Jordan, you're the worst. So yin style yoga is you hold the poses for a lot longer, like 5-10 minutes each pose. And they're usually on the ground. It's usually not standing positions. So...
That sounds dumb.
Jordan!
I only asked the question for the benefit of all of our listeners, the thousands of people that listen to this podcast. Okay,
Stop interrupting and I will explain.
Okay, go
Okay.
on with your story.
So as they're in these relaxing poses and Brianna's doing a guided meditation,
Yeah.
then we go around and massage people in those positions.
Okay.
So it's
I think the only reason why I keep interrupting you is because I'm like,
you're avoiding the story.
yeah, I'm scared about where this is going. Okay, go. I'm not going to say anything else until you get to the punchline.
There's no punchline.
Oh, there is.
I'm the punchline.
There's a punchline to every story. Proceed.
Okay. So prior to the class, I had everyone fill out intake forms because I do give out receipts for the massage portion of the class. The class is 90 minutes, but they get a receipt for just the portion of the massage.
Okay.
And everyone fills out an intake form and I do proper charting and all that. But prior to this, someone had been emailing and asking if they could come because they're pregnant. They said, would it still work? Because a lot of the positions you're laying on the ground and they might not be able to with their belly, and they're saying all this stuff. And so we'd been going back and forth and talked to this person. And then this was a little while ago. They wanted to register like a few weeks ago. And so I kind of forgot about that conversation. And then at the class, everyone's filing in and someone comes in and I'm like, oh, there's the pregnant lady. And and I'd kind of forgotten about it. And I was like, wait, is she? And then I was like, oh, well, I'll just check the intake form again, right? And so I have it on my phone. So I look at the intake form and I realized this person hadn't filled out the intake form recently because it was actually a prior client of mine, and anyone who had seen me before, I didn't make them fill out another intake form, right? Mm-hmm. So the intake form was a little bit dated. It wasn't filled out, just a few weeks ago. It was filled out a year ago. And so I thought, well, the intake form's old. She could be pregnant, right? And so I'm like trying to think, and I don't have much time. Like I need to get everyone settled. The class is starting soon. And so I needed to check though for sure that she was, because we had two massage therapists and she was on the side of the other massage therapist, and I needed to let the other massage therapist know, right? Because I wasn't the one who was treating her. And so I was like, no, I'm pretty sure she is. Like, anyway, so I go over and say hi to her. And it's nice that I do already know this person. So I'm like, hey, how's it going? And then I said, so you're expecting, right?
Oh, God.
And she's
I
like,
can't.
And she's like, what?
Oh,
and in this moment,
no.
I know
No.
she's not. And she goes, what?
No.
And I say,
Please.
and I said, I must be mixed up. And she said, oh, you're thinking of my friend Bailey. She was going to come, but she isn't. I was emailing you guys about her. So the email conversation I had was actually with her, but it wasn't for her. It was like for her friend. So, like, it was like really confusing.
I mean, good on that person for like.
Oh, and she did
Yeah.
not seem to let it phase her at all. And we actually chatted for a long time after that about our kids and yada, yada.
She just owned it. She's like,
She totally owned it.
I look pregnant. I got no shame. I got a belly. I like Doritos.
Thank heavens, though, that it was her friend that.
Right.
Because right away she was like, oh, no, you're just getting mixed up because it was my friend.
Right.
Thankfully, it wasn't just someone random in the class that I said that to and got mixed up. So it didn't, I didn't even feel actually embarrassed in the moment. It just flowed really nicely. I like quickly saved it by saying, oh, I must have gotten mixed up. And we chatted. It was fine. But after the class, I just kept replaying it in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just felt so bad because I know that's just such a no. You don't ask, and I am really good about that. I don't think I've ever asked someone if they're pregnant before. That was the first time.
The only time I ever have is when it's so obvious.
I know, right?
Right, like the person's pregnant.
Yeah, and this one it wasn't super obvious. I only asked because of this prior interaction.
Right.
I have had also a similar experience with massage where I've mobile massage. I've come into the home and I'm like, that person is pregnant, but they haven't told me. And they filled out the intake form prior. You know.
So how do you ask?
So so I have a pretty good way. So this person, I was like,
because this is a
she's
useful
pregnant.
tip if like people need to know this.
And people are so funny clients sometimes that they won't tell you.
Right.
Which
Or they
is
just assume
weird.
you know.
Or they assume you know. They're like,
Right.
oh, maybe I told them at my last appointment. And so
Right.
it's tricky with massage because you do need to know. There's contraindications. You need to have them proper positioning and stuff. And so my way to ask without asking is kind of a small talk way of saying, so anything new and exciting going on? That's usually my phrase I'll say, new and exciting. And I ask people that even just randomly, normal to, I don't know, see if they're going on a vacation or something. And so I ask that before I get them on the table.
Okay.
So anything new or what's new, you know?
Right.
And then hopefully they'll say something. But
what if they don't?
Then you do need to ask.
So how would you ask? Like, what's a safe way, or do you just have to eat it?
You may just have to eat it. I've never had that experience.
Okay.
The one person where I was like, I'm pretty sure she is. Then she told me, she was like, oh, well, we got to hear the baby's heartbeat this week or something.
Yeah,
like she had something to say. And I was like, okay, good. Another way you could do it is you could have them fill out a new intake. So if the intake form is old, you could have them fill out a new one. You could say, oh, this intake's a little old. I'll have you fill out a new one and have them fill it out. And that question is on the intake.
Right.
That would be the best way. That's what I would do. That's my recommendation. Fill out a new intake.
Crazy. Well, I'm so embarrassed for you. I still love you.
Oh, good.
Okay, anything else?
No, that's all.
All right. Let us know if you have a good, some advice on how to ask someone if they're pregnant.
Yeah. Or any other questions that you want to ask. Say your client comes in totally bald and you're like, maybe my client has cancer, but they haven't filled out that on the intake form. Or again, the intake form is old.
Like, no, they don't have cancer. They have the bushiest eyebrows still.
True, yeah.
Yeah. Or any other, I'd love to hear what you think. Like, tax write-offs that are just not worth your time,
Yeah.
Or any feedback on that, like what you think. Yeah, let us know. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to stay in touch, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We've included the links to these in the show notes. Also, be sure to check out our website, onlinewellness.ca, if you need any continuing education credits. All of our courses have been approved by massage associations across Canada. Anyways, we'll catch you next time.